NotebookLM just rebranded to Gemini Notebook and it came with a flurry of updates. So I put it against the two tools that everyone else actually uses, Notion and Obsidian. The interesting part is what I found after the winner won, because almost everyone is only using this tool to about 10% of its real capability. So first, which of these tools is actually the best second brain online notebook? Then the part that almost nobody else actually covers. How do you turn this glorified pen and paper into a system that helps you get real work done faster? The second half is where the real stuff is. The test was built across 3 different tasks, 12 sources about latest AI news across all 3 of the tools that I'm covering today. One is the ingestion. Can it actually take all 12 sources? Can it reason across all of these sources to answer a vague question? And the third task is reasoning across sources. Can it understand when different sources conflict and which one I should actually listen to? Let's start with Notion first, and I want to give it credit before I kind of tear it apart. Number 1, it reasons extremely well, by far the best of all 3 tools. I gave it a vague query about a fact buried into one page of the 5 PDFs I uploaded. I also phrased it loosely to see if the tool could understand what I was actually asking without all of the context. And Notion nailed it. Clean reasoning, clean answer, everything checked out perfectly. So the thinking is absolutely there, which is why what happened next kind of stumped me. It was only able to ingest 5 sources of the 12 on the free plan. And it didn't just throttle my limit and slowly ingest the others. There wasn't any warning that it could only handle 5. It just stopped me when I tried to upload all 12. And the second that happened, the test stopped, because the final task was reasoning across all the sources, but it wasn't even able to take all 12. So Notion has incredible reasoning, but it wasn't able to actually see the full picture. In the type of work that I do, that's super crucial, so Notion is checked off the list. Great brain, but a very small desk. Next up is Obsidian, and it kind of went in the opposite direction. Obsidian ingested 12 out of 12 fast. I'm talking instantly. It took every source without complaint, without a throttle, without even slowing down, and that's more than Notion could handle. It tied the winner in terms of ingestion capability and speed. Then I went and tried to ask it to reason across the different sources. Nothing. Because out of the box, on a free plan, Obsidian doesn't come with built-in native reasoning. To get to cross-source reasoning, you're going to need to download a few APIs, a few plugins, connect everything manually, and then set it up to reason across all the things you've ingested. And that's all before you even get to ask your first question. And I'm not trying to sit here and say that's a flaw. That is specifically by design. Obsidian gives you a lot of creative freedom, therefore it needs to limit the amount of things it's giving you naturally built in. If you're looking for the experience of being able to build out your system exactly how you want it, Obsidian might be the right fit. But if you're someone like me who just wants the tool that's going to reason well, be efficient, and move quickly, then Obsidian is probably not for you. Let's move on to the final tool, and I'm assuming you know it's the winner by now. Gemini Notebook. It ingested 12 out of 12 sources in 20 seconds. I gave it the same vague question as I gave Notion, and it answered it incredibly fast. Then I gave it the final task, and the one that matters the most. I asked it a question to reason across all the different sources to identify which tool is the best capability for me specifically. In my opinion, that's the entire reason you'd want a research tool instead of a paper notebook. And to its credit, it caught every contradiction, every claim it laid out that the source made. It had a specific citation for what page, sentence, so I could go check it myself, and all the numbers were perfectly matching the documents I had uploaded. And that was all on the free plan, with no setup, no plugin. I didn't even put in any custom instructions. In my specific test, and anyone's workflow who doesn't want a large-scale setup, I think Gemini Notebook wins, and I don't think it's even close. By the way, nobody paid for that. This video is completely unsponsored, and that was simply my own test. After I found Gemini Notebook was the winner, I wanted to dive deeper into how people are using it in their daily life, and what I found honestly surprised me. Almost everyone uses Gemini Notebook like a chatbot that is able to handle more sources. You open it, upload your sources, ask a question, and just move on. But it is capable of so much more than that. So I'm going to walk you through a few power features I identified throughout my research and in my own usage. I think these will genuinely turn up the notch that Gemini Notebook is performing for you. So I'm going to cover the 5 things that almost nobody ever touch. And the first one taught me more in a few minutes than the other 4 combined. Number 1 is directed audio. It turns your sources into a podcast with 1 or more voices discussing everything covered. Now that part, I'll be honest, everyone already knows. But here's the part that most people don't. I don't just hit generate audio overview. I tell it exactly what to do. So in this example, I asked it to focus on comparing cost versus value and help me make my decision on which model is the best for a content creator. And the difference was honestly insane. Default gives you a summary of everything that the different articles covered. It's fine. It's generic, but it's a podcast about my sources about all the AI models that launched. A directed prompt answers the exact question I wanted answered. It's a podcast about your decision or your question. Same button, but it becomes a completely different asset. And I want you to hold on to that because it applies to everything else I'm sharing with you throughout the rest of this video. Giving specific directions to Gemini Notebook leads to a much better output from the studio tools. You get one shot at telling it what you actually care about, and you need to take it seriously. Now, this next one is the most underrated thing in the entire app, and I will literally die on that hill because I think it is so awesome. Number 2 is mind map. It generates in about 10 seconds. Most people hear mind map and think of a diagram. You take a screenshot of this big map showing you all the different things you should research and how they all interlinked, and then you move on. You kind of forget about it. It just lives on your computer forever. But that's truthfully not what Gemini Notebook's mind map is. I think it's on another level. It's an entire navigation layer. You're not just looking at your research, you're able to navigate and move through it. So when you click on a big branch, it obviously expands into smaller branches. Those branches expand into even smaller ones, and sometimes you can get all the way to a 4th expansion. Whenever you get to the last expansion, you're able to click on that specific bubble, and it's going to automatically take a prompt from that bubble into the chat for Gemini Notebook, send the chat, asking it to explain more about that specific concept in detail. Now, I think that is super crucial and a differentiator between Gemini Notebook and a lot of other mind maps online because it naturally helps you learn more in depth about the smaller, more niche decision makers that you need to understand. So you can explore until something catches your eye, then click and interrogate until you have all the information you need about that specific topic. Then you can go back to the mind map and do it again. That's not an output. It's literally an interface for all of your information. Okay, but all of these things assume that Gemini Notebook is actually telling you the truth. This one isn't flashy, but I think it's a true capability that you need to understand. It's the entire reason I use this tool and trust it. I asked it specifically about something that wasn't in my sources. Benchmarks on a model that I know I did not upload inside the sources. Now I want you to watch what it does. It didn't make up an answer. It told me that it truthfully does not have it. A general chatbot usually sees a gap in information and decides to fill it with a guess. Gemini Notebook doesn't do that. If it sees a gap in information, rather than filling it with a guess, it'll either look online or prompt you to look online to give it the source it needs to fill that gap. So your gaps are no longer little areas for chatbots to fill with misinformation or guesses. They become opportunities for you to deepen your knowledge, especially about specific topics. Now, after it went ahead and found the sources in about 40 seconds, it cited all of them and tagged all of them. And what really surprised me was there was an ingest button right underneath all the listed sources. So I was able to click ingest and bring all those sources into my source pool, which will now be referenced whenever Gemini Notebook is advising me on another question I ask. So any question that it's unable to answer is going to allow you to further grow your research library. Now, finally, I want to show you 2 outputs for anything you have that's external facing. So if you want to take your information on your sources and actually show it to another human being. Number 4 is the infographic. And I honestly couldn't think of a use case for this when I first heard of it. That was until I saw the output. So I asked for a visual style to be sketch note style, and it matched it almost exactly 1-to-1 with the visual style I selected. And it did it better than I had expected. I expected just a basic visual graph showing the differences in the model prices, but it actually included small little text bubbles about the reasoning behind each source. It didn't just say, this one's worse. It said, this one's worse, here's exactly why. So then I did what I always do. I checked the claims it made against the reference documents I had uploaded, and the facts matched 1-to-1. So again, it wasn't making anything up. It created this infographic based on the sources that I had provided. Now, 2 caveats here. 1, it does look AI generated. There's no way around it. It's created by an AI. You can use it as an idea and then create your own variation of it in a similar style or in a completely different one. 2, the infographic did come with a Gemini Notebook watermark, and that is true for most of the visual assets you asked to be created. So if you decide to upgrade and remove the watermark, you could directly show that version to someone else. But this next power feature is something you could actually send to someone else. Number 5 is the data table. So I put the 12 sources into one table. Every model, every number, every benchmark, all got fit into one table inside of Gemini Notebook. Every row was traceable and every citation was placed in the last column. And then once again, when it wasn't able to find a specific metric for a random tool that was on the list, it didn't just make one up. It said, no match found. It marked the holes instead of hiding them so I could understand where the gaps inside of my data table lie. But now I'm going to show you the part that made data tables the most used capability I'm using inside of Gemini Studio. It can export directly into Excel. That's the thing you'd have to spend an entire afternoon hand building, done by an AI, based on your sources, matching them exactly within a few minutes. So those are the 5 power features I promised to share with you to upgrade your usage on Gemini Notebook. But there's one more thing I want to share with you as a little treat for staying to the end of the video. The bonus is deep research, and I think this is the true capability that if you leverage it correctly, is going to put you ahead of many other Gemini Notebook, Notion, or Obsidian users. The timestamps honestly tell this better than I can because this is the heaviest thing in the entire tool. I started it at 3:50 and it finished at 3:57 p.m. In about 7 minutes, it found and validated 51 different sources about AI models. Inside those sources, it covered more than 25 AI models, some of which I have never heard of and all of which I never mentioned to the tool specifically. I went ahead and back-checked 5 of these sources kind of at random, and everything seemed to match one-to-one perfectly with all the facts, prices, capabilities listed on the sources. I think that is genuinely an insane capability, and even if you're not doing something like price comparison, it can do deep research for you on whatever topics you specifically want. And I think that's genuinely so useful. So now we're back to where we started. Notion couldn't hold enough material. Obsidian can't natively reason off of it, but Gemini Notebook was able to handle all of those capabilities. But that's not why it ran away as a clear winner. It ran away because it hands you back real finished work. A chatbot gives you text within a window that you still have to go back to and continue prompting. Gemini Notebook takes your prompts, fills in the gaps with whatever research needs to be covered, and then hands you back things like infographics, videos already finished, AI overviews, flashcards, quizzes. There's so much I didn't even cover inside of this video. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like and subscribe, and check out this one where I dive into every Gemini Notebook feature.